Welcome to Nog Spellenzolder, and this time I want to take a look at the Vegas Slot Machine 1973, published by Camber Games. It's a game for 1 to 4 players and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to play. And in this game, as the title slightly gives away, we're going to play a slot machine. We're going to try to get rows or columns of 3 identical symbols in order to score victory points, and at the same time we try to avoid setting up combinations for the next player. The player who at the end of the game has the most victory points will be victorious. Keep in mind, the game I'm about to show you is still a prototype, so the final product may vary in both shape and or rules. But first, let's have a look at what's in this small box. The game is designed by Huub Drewes, and we get a set of playing cards with the symbols we're trying to collect in order to get the points, and they're the regular slot machine symbols. Every player gets their own reference sheet and their scoring sheet, and we get this whiteboard marker in order to use on the small scoring sheet, and obviously the rules. This version only has the Dutch rules, but there will be English rules available, and this is still a simple printout. But the rules themselves, they're easy, with some nice examples here. But that's what we get. Let's set up the game. And this is how the game is set up for 2 players. In the middle of the table you create the slot machine by laying out 3 rows with each 3 symbol cards. The remaining symbol cards are in a draw pile. Every player receives 3 of them. You keep them hidden from your opponent, but for this example I've laid them open on the table. Every player gets their own reference card, their scoring card, and you're ready to play. The game is played over 4 rounds. You're going to score 4 times, and the round ends when the draw pile is empty and the players have no more cards in their hands. Once that happened, you tally up the score you achieved that round, you write it down, and everything gets reshuffled and reset. An important thing, if during setup there's already a row with 3 identical symbols, and the game refers to a row both horizontal, vertical and diagonally. If one of these rows has 3 identical symbols, for instance we have cherry, cherry, any, and the any is any symbol you like, you'll open up new cards covering these up in order to prevent the first player from having a huge advantage. Once you've done that, you're ready to start playing the game. Appoint a starting player, and when it's a player's turn, they choose one of the 3 cards they hold in their hand to place on the slot machine. There are a couple of rules you have to observe placing cards. First of all, you're not allowed to place the same symbol on each other. So I cannot place these cherries on any of the cherry slots. Second of all, if there are 2 identical neighboring symbols, like these, I am not allowed to go place my card over those. If there is any symbol like this one, you're not allowed to place any cards on any symbol. And finally, in the entirety of the game there are 3 shields. Shields are a bit special because if all 3 of them appear in the slot machine, you can immediately score them. You do not have to put them in one of the rows. If they are visible, you can score them. So if there are 2 shields visible, you may not lay one of your symbol cards on top of them. They're treated like 2 neighboring cards of the same symbol. So those are the placement rules. When you start placing your card, you want to score points, and you score points by making an entire row have the same symbol. And as I explained before, rows are considered both horizontal and vertical and diagonally. So, and even the 3 cards in your own hand, if they have matching symbols, they are also considered a row. So for instance, I can place my cherries over here. Then I'm going to check whether I made one row or maybe multiple. I collect the 3 cards which together make up the row and place them in my scoring pile. On your reference card you can see the amount of cards with the symbol in the entirety of the game and the amount of points you get. For instance, these cherries are worth 8 points. And I put them to the side so that at the end of the round I can easily tally up my score. After that I'm going to refill any empty spaces. If you refill, you always go from left to right, from top to bottom. So I'm going to refill that one, and I'm going to refill my hand. And then I'm going to make a second check whether there is a new line I might score. So as long as it's my turn, if new lines appear, I can immediately score them again. For instance, if this was like so, I would have had a diagonal row with 2 oranges and an any symbol, and I could score them as well. So the turn goes to the next player. That player chooses 1 card from their hand, for instance the lemon, and they then check if they score anything. 3 lemons, so 1, 2 and 3, and they put them in their scoring pile with 12 points. Start refilling left to right, top to bottom, and refill their own hand. 1 card. And play continues to the next player, and so forth and so forth. As soon as the pile runs out and the players have no more cards left in their hands, the first round is over. You tally up the score of all these symbols you've obtained, you write it down, and you reshuffle all the cards, make a new slot machine, give every player 3 new cards, and you start the next round. A special situation. It could happen that there's only sets of 2 identical neighboring symbols in the entire slot machine. If that happens, you're allowed to place your card on any card, respecting the fact that you cannot have matching symbols on top of each other. And so over the course of 4 rounds you're gonna obtain points, and the person with the most points at the end of the 4th round will be the winner of the Vegas Slot Machine 1973. Vegas Slot Machine 1973 is a fast, easy to play, accessible game, and that's something I really like. But there is more. Apart from the fact that you can set it up in no time, it's a very compact box, and the rules are fairly easy to explain. Play a card, check if you score a row, refill, check if there's any more rows, and then refill your hand. There are some hidden layers which I really appreciate about this game. First of all, there's a push your luck element in there. Certain symbols are very rare in the game, and if you manage to get a couple of them in your hand, you might try to set up something in order to score some massive amounts of points. But again, there's always the any symbol, and you never know what other people keep in their hands. So setting up is always a bit tricky, but sometimes it's really paying off. And if you have to play a card but you cannot score any rows, what symbol are you gonna cover up? What are you gonna lay down, and does it affect any of the other players? Will they be able to benefit from it, or will you be able to just make a mess out of their plans, their strategies? So that's an easy element. You never exactly know what is going to happen. You can calculate a little bit because you know how many symbols there are in the entire game and all those symbols will eventually come into play, but you'll never know when. So that's something very interesting. And there's the memory element. If you're good at memorizing, remembering what symbols get covered up, you might be able to plan ahead and combo. For instance, you score a row, remove those cards, new symbols show, and you may be able to score another row because you've set up certain cards in the right way. So that's something else. It is difficult. Well, for me it's difficult, but it is a sure way to score a bit more and set certain things up so that you may get even more rows in a single turn. So those interesting mechanics, they run along in this very simple game, and they give it a nice level of depth, which makes the game very replayable. It's also, like a real slot machine, kind of addictive in a good way. I mean, because it's so fast, you'll be able to play it a lot of times. It's easy to set up. You can explain it to new players very quickly, and everybody will understand making a row of 3 symbols. And the layers, they add nice extras to give it more replayability. There's also a cooperative version in here, which gives the players the objective to reach certain amounts of points, and there's a solo game in the rules. So there's some different ways in which you can play this game. I like the theme. I mean, it really feels like a slot machine. There is a luck factor in the game because you don't know which cards you're going to get. You never know when certain symbols will get into the game, or whenever you'll draw them, and where they're going to end up. So it's something that's like a real slot machine, but there's a certain amount of tactical options you do have. Preparing certain rows, keeping certain symbols in your hands, and waiting for the right moment. So the luck and control factors, they're both well balanced. And all of this is packaged in this small box and played with a fairly small amount of rules. It's easy, it's accessible, and that's what I like. So all in all, I can really recommend this game. I love the way its simplicity makes it accessible to almost everybody. I like the extra mechanics that lie underneath and give it that nice amount of depth, which makes its replayability very good, and its nice addictiveness, because you do want to score the most points, and you do want to make those nice setups and then get the payoff of scoring row after row in one turn and just obliterating your opponents. And if you fail miserably, there's the revenge factor, that you're gonna try harder next time, set things up differently, and hope Lady Luck smiles on you the next turn. And so for these reasons, if you like small, fast but layered card games, this is one game I'd really recommend to check out, and that's the reason I've given it an 8.
Nachts Spellenzolder.